Thank you, Richard. Appreciate what you say about applying these things to our lives, because that's the point. That's why we study the book. We don't just study the scriptures to learn and to get all the facts, but we do that. We study so we can learn how to be better Christians and how to serve God in a way that's pleasing to Him. And the book of Genesis, and especially at this particular time, because all of it, but during the present story that we're in, the account of Joseph that we're looking at, there's so much there that we can learn from. There's so much application there that to our lives in a way that, I mean, unless you don't suffer any hardship and you have a life that's just perfectly smooth, and if that's the way it is, then God's graced you with that. But most of us don't have that. We have hardship and trouble, and we don't know why things are happening the way they are. But what we learn from here in Genesis and with Joseph is that God's got His plan. And as we're looking at these things, and we're going to be going pretty fast through the narrative because it's pretty simple and plain, but it's the whole plan is God is working in the life of Joseph in a way that serves His purpose, that is going to be a salvation, physical salvation, for so many, not just those in Egypt or just in Canaan, but actually the entire world back at that time. As we know, the prediction from Joseph that there's going to be famine, and so we need to look at our lives the same way. God's got a reason for why we're going through what we're going through, and even though we don't know what is going to happen, we can trust God that He's working for His purpose in our lives to affect others and to be a positive influence on those around us and to accomplish His will. So, as we get back in, just quickly kind of catching up here, Genesis chapter 40, verse 18, here's Joseph with the baker and the, what was it, the cupbearer, right? The cupbearer and the baker, and he interprets their dream while he's in prison. And he's in prison now for at this time, probably about 5 years. He'll spend another 2 years here, as we recall, until he actually meets up with Joseph. And we'll read a little bit here as we catch up and get into chapter 40. I think it's 42 we're going to be jumping into pretty quickly. We've covered all this. So here's Joseph has this opportunity before Pharaoh. And it says here in verse 46, Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So here we're recapping here. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And so here we have him doing that, and we have the last thing. We'll jump into chapter 42. Let's look down to verse 57, the last verse. So all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe in all the lands. So God is gracious, and of course he's focused on Jacob and the family and Joseph's brothers and all their family that he's trying to rescue here. That's looks like the focus, but it's all the lands that are being rescued because of what God is doing through Joseph when he interprets Pharaoh's dream and then is placed in charge by Pharaoh to be just second in command over all Egypt. I mean, just imagine that. Look how God works. He's in prison, and and the next day he's the second in command over all Egypt. Wow. I mean, and we need to have the same attitude. Whatever is happening to me, there's something God is going to do. He's going to rescue. He's going to accomplish something in my life, even through the difficult times. Okay, so chapter 42, Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. All right, let's get into that here. Any questions or comments before we start? We got all caught up to this point. Okay, verse 1. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" I love that. Why do you just stand around looking at each other? We got to do something here. And he said, "I indeed have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there that we may live and not die." So it's serious stuff. They weren't all out of food, obviously, because they didn't die the next day, but they saw what was coming. We're going to learn later, it's been 2 years of famine when they actually go up now. So it's been 2 years that no crops and everything is just not, and nothing is producing. Verse 3, so Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. So that last little expression there, that they journeyed along with others. So this whole, probably the Hivites and the Hittites and the Jebusites and whatever's along the coast, whatever part of the Phoenicians were there, everybody's headed to Egypt because there's no food anywhere other than where God put Joseph to preserve all that food that he's been preserving for 7 years. Okay, verse 6. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. So here sets up something that goes on, I don't know for how long, that Joseph intentionally deceives his brothers. Now, you wonder, is that a good thing to deceive people? Well, no, I think really, but there's a plan here, there's a purpose here. And whether God was the one behind Joseph treating them this way, I don't think it was revenge. We see that at the end of the story. He loves his family, even though they've mistreated him severely. But do Joseph's brothers need to be taught a lesson? That's very obvious. That's what's happening here. And so whether it was Joseph's idea or the Lord told him to say these things, we don't know. But he's acting now as if he doesn't know them. And he accuses them here of some things that were pretty serious as we get into the context here. So, okay, then he said to them, where do you come from? Okay, of course he knows all this. And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. So here's his story. And even though he knows who they are, he's giving them this account. Okay, what are you guys doing here? Spying out the land? This nakedness of the land basically is, just to see where we're defenseless. And see what our defenses are, and you're here to see how maybe you can come in and take all this food for yourself. Would be the thing. That's why they would be spying, if they were, which they're not, of course. And he remembers those dreams that he had back now he's 30 here, so that would be 20, 10. No. How many years ago? 13 years ago? 13 years ago, yeah. And I don't think it's as if he, let's see, we're doing a bunch of numbers. 30, he met, so, well, anyway, we'll get into some numbers here in just a minute, but a long time ago. And it's not like he'd forget something like those dreams, but he recalls them now and sees that this is exactly what's happening. Those dreams he had about the sheaves bowing down to him and the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down, and this now is being fulfilled. Here they are bowing before their brother who they sold as a slave into Egypt. Verse 10. And they said to him, no, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, no, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. So as he's standing before the one who they think is no more, he still is there, isn't he? Joseph, who they sold, is who they're saying is no more. Okay, verse 14. But Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. So he put them all together in prison, 3 days. So they're getting their comeuppance. And we've seen in the families recently, all the way back to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, some of the things which they did. And we'll read a verse in a minute about when the things you sow, the seed you sow that is bad is going to come back on you. And this is what's happening to them. Even though this is basically made up, Joseph is letting them suffer through the agony of him thinking that they are spies and what could happen to them. I mean, they could be put to death maybe, or made as slaves, just like they made Joseph a slave. I mean, it's just all the things going through their heads. Mike.
Yeah, they're largely truthful with Joseph here in saying, you know, we're all the sons of one man, and the youngest one is back with his father, you know, which I'm sure gladdens Joseph's heart greatly. And then they go, and there's one that is no longer alive. Now, when you think about that, they knew that he could very well be alive. He had been sold as a servant.
Yeah.
And yet, in order to perpetuate the lie that they told their father, they need to keep to the same story.
Oh, what a tangled web, right? They lied back there to their father, and they actually aren't going to be able revealing it here to Joseph either. You know, one is dead. Well, you know, they don't know that. So don't lie. That's the moral of the story. It brings trouble. Okay, we are going kind of quickly, but it's just the account of what's going on, and these things are easy to kind of absorb. We'll stop and make some points as we hit some things that are of interest or of greater interest. Verse 15, then Joseph said to them the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they said, and they did so. Then they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. So, now that's not necessarily an inspired statement they're making, but it's true, I believe. I think we'll follow up and see that the trouble they're having now is because of the sin which they've committed, grievous sin, so many years ago, and now this trouble is happening to them. We quoted this verse back when they took Joseph and sold him into slavery. It wasn't an easy thing for Joseph. Joseph has been through a lot of hardship. Remember, he names even one of his sons forgetfulness, because he's forgotten about all the hardship of being sold into slavery and in prison for 6 or 7 years. And so it's not easy. He's not been through, none of us have been through something like this. I hope we never have to be. But all through it, he's staying trusting in God. But here the brothers are recounting now what exactly, why this is happening to them. Over in Numbers 32, we'll look in just a second here. Let's see, let me just check my notes here, make sure I'm in the right spot. This is later on in Numbers, of course, when the children of Israel coming in to possess the promised land. And as they come in, and as they have the different battles, the tribes that descend from Gad and Reuben, two sons of Jacob, they see the land that's on the east side of the Jordan, and it's a beautiful place and good for flocks, which is what they were all about, is shepherding flocks and having cattle and so on. And they said, we'd like to take this land. And Moses says, well, now if you do that, you need to come over and fight with us for the number of years it's going to take and conquer the entire land. And they said, we will. We'll do that. We're going to have, this is where we're going to settle, but we'll go with everybody else in battle and possess and conquer the land of Canaan. And at that time, Moses says this in Numbers 32:23. He says, but if you do not do so, then take note. You have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Now there's a statement made by an inspired prophet of God that would happen to them. The brothers of Joseph believe it's happening to them right now, that their sin has found them out and they're suffering these consequences that even though it's concocted, you think about it for a minute. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers when they came down, he could have said, "Oh, I'm your brother. Oh, so good to see you." But no, he allows this to go on for a number of months, them believing that they're being suspected of being spies. And it turns out to be the kind of suffering that they're paying. Their sin has found them out. Basically, is what's happening here. Oh, I'm sorry. Dorothy, you got a comment?
Sorry. Out of curiosity, as you're going through this, I never thought of this before. God says in Deuteronomy, excuse me,
The same thing I got.
32, 35, that vengeance is his. And I know we don't know Joseph's motives, but yet at the same time, do you think this could be a little vengeance going
You wonder
on?
about that. I'm going to give them some comeuppance, and get back a little bit, have them sweat here really hard for a while. You just can't know. You can't know for sure, I don't think. I think, if anything, he wants them to learn the lesson. He loves them. We'll see that in a bit. That when he finally reveals himself, that is very emotional. He loves them, not just Benjamin, his close brother, but the rest of them. They cry and they hug, and so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his heart was, but basically, I think this is what God wanted to happen. So I think my opinion is that God is directing Joseph to behave this way. I
guess just sometimes there's times we as humans, they always call it their get-uppins and karma.
That's another way of saying this exact thing.
But yet, for me personally, there's times I want to say, I just want to get them back for once.
Oh yeah, see, that's where it's not right. And that's where you're right by quoting that verse, vengeance is mine, right? Yeah, God's, not mine.
But then there's times when you're parenting, that it's not that you're trying to get them back, you're trying to teach them something.
Yeah, right.
But yet,
Sure.
I feel like it's, and I have a hard time. It's not in my heart, but yet I have a grandson that just loves to argue. And so it comes down to
you
where
have one
I'm
of those?
examining everything that I do all the time. And is this vengeance? Is it not vengeance? Is it teaching? So it makes me think here, what was his motives?
Yeah. All the way through here, Joseph has been so pure. He was pure with Potiphar's wife, even though he struggled with that for a long time as she was trying to have a relationship with him. So, he's not perfect. So, but it seems like his motives are pure. I think they're pure here. That's my opinion. But it doesn't tell us what his motives are, so we can't know for sure. Yeah, good point. Sam had his hand up, and while if you could, maybe Mike's got a point you can make while he's getting over there.
I think we need to go on to 22 through 24, which we'll do in a minute here.
Yeah, we will.
Because it reveals a great deal about Joseph's heart and what he perceives at this time from the comment that's made by Reuben. And so, I think we're kind of stopped a little early here.
That's okay. I love the discussion. This is what it's about. We're trying to figure these things out and give each other insight. So yeah, we'll get into it. If there's something we can learn that, here in a minute, we'll learn it. Sam.
Yes, his motive is kind of clearly more seen in the later verses. But you look at it where he's like, he put him in prison for 3 days. And at that point, the reader is going to be like, what is his intentions? Is he trying to, give them a little bit of, return? I see it as he has a goal, and he's going to, he doesn't want to miss out on this goal, and he wants to see his family again. He wants to save his family. He wants to see his family, and so he's acting wisely on how he's going to get it to come about. He's going to get his brothers to take it seriously, and to do exactly how he needs to have it happen. Maybe it didn't need to happen this way, but he wants it to happen this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see later on that he's quite happy about the situation. He's not mad at them.
Yeah, no, I mean, he really puts it through, you'll see, he really puts them through it here. I mean, just
Make
once,
one more comment?
2 or 3 times. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, this is an illustration as well that sometimes we're not doing anyone a favor by removing the consequences of their actions.
No.
In other words, Joseph really did his brethren a good here, a blessing ultimately. It helped them to perceive what they had done and what being brothers meant. And if he had just let him skate on this, which he could have easily done, having the authority that he did,
Yeah, he could have
it
done.
would have cheapened the whole experience.
It might have. God's will is being done here. I don't know exactly why. So, yeah. Sue?
I think it's a perfect example of how, for us to love a person, sometimes we have to exercise tough love. And I think, again, we can't realize his motives, but I think he's acting in their best interest to help them to see
Yeah.
where they went wrong.
I think
and
that's
hopefully
true.
they'll grow
Yeah.
through the situation.
Yeah.
And, to Dorothy's point, I think we do that a lot with especially our children and maybe grandkids, because they look at it as, whoa, you must hate me. But, you're acting in their best interest. And sometimes that can be extremely tough.
That's right. And it was tough for him. We're going to see how tough it was for him to keep silent and not tell him who he was. We'll see that. One other verse I want to bring up about this thing about your sins will find you out. Galatians 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that he will also reap. That's a principle you can apply to just, I mean, you sow spiritual things. The context is here, I think. You reap spiritual things. You sow to the flesh, meaning your lust, then you're going to corruption, then you're going to receive corruption is going to find you out. And that's what's going to be the result of your life is just corruption. And in the end, eternal corruption. So they had sown some serious deception. And of course, the act of selling Joseph into slavery was terrible. And now they're reaping some of the things that they sowed. In fact, they're being threatened with here, you'll see in a minute, with the same situation of being slaves, and that's what they put Joseph through. Okay, moving on here. Verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, so he's talking to his brothers here. Did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? Therefore, behold, this blood is now required of us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them with an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them and wept. Then he returned to them again and talked with them. He took Simon from them and bound him before their eyes. So he's totally emotionally caught up in this. I think he loves his family. This is hard to hear. He knows who they are, and yet he's maintaining this deception for a purpose, and it makes him cry. That he's that, it's that much affecting his heart. And he has to because I mean, and it's cool that he's talking with them through an interpreter, which gives them the impression he doesn't understand what they're saying. So as they're talking before him, he has this advantage. Okay, so this is a very tender heart situation that's going on here, even though he's applying this tough love, as Sue calls it. Okay, so he takes Simeon from them and binds him before their eyes. And then verse 25, then Joseph gave command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So he loaded their donkeys with grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at an encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, my money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, what is this that God has done to us? So here, obviously the money's there because it was put there, and it just makes it worse. Now we're thieves, or we're not only spies, but now we're going to be accused of being thieves and stealing our money back, for the grain that we purchased. And again, here's what they say. What is this that God has done to us? They recognize that God is doing something to them. They believe it's because of their grievous sin selling Joseph into slavery. And I think you have to say that's the case. He's putting them through this suffering for a reason. Because what you sow, you shall reap. That's what's going on here. Okay, verse 29. Then they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan and told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your households and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. Okay, so that's an explanation, exactly what's happened. We get verse 29. Then it happened as they emptied their sacks that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And you want me to take Benjamin? Or you want to take Benjamin? So, I mean, Jacob is under some big stress here. Joseph he lost so many years ago. Now Levi is in prison. Don't know if he'll ever get out. Simeon, I'm sorry, he's in prison. Don't know if he'll ever get out. And now you want me to send Benjamin? I mean, just one at a time. I'm losing my children here. That's one thing you wonder why Jacob is caused to go through much. But there's a reason for it. God has a reason that he sends us through this kind of hardship and heartache even. I wish it were all a bed of roses, but Joseph is a great example of life is not going to be a bed of roses. It's going to be tough at times, very tough. Let's see, Benjamin, and now you want to take back, all these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. So, these chapters go pretty quickly, as you see here. We don't have a lot of detail that needs to be that we'll talk about, but we'll talk about some. Chapter 43, Joseph's brothers return with Benjamin. Okay, verse 1, now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back, buy us a little food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down to buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Now Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you had still another brother? But they said, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? I mean, they don't know what's going on they don't know that this is Joseph. They don't know what's going on in Joseph's head. Then Judah said to Israel's father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also all our little ones. So it's that serious. I myself will be surety for him from my hand. Now this is, Reuben was the first one who said, take my children if I don't bring them back. But now this is Judah, who says, from my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. So Judah. He's the brother or the son of Jacob that the Christ would come through. This is a little bit similar to Jesus and his sacrifice for us, right? You like to bring those connections up, Mike. I'm not sure if you were planning to.
I was.
You were. Okay. Go ahead.
Reuben couldn't be the guarantor for his brother, not in Jacob's eyes,
Yeah.
which is interesting. He's the oldest, but we know that he's also violated his father's bed. And so he's fallen into dishonor. He's trying to redeem himself as well as redeem his brother.
Yeah.
And then it is Judah, as you point out, through whom Christ comes, that offers to be the guarantor for his brother's life.
Yeah.
And he says, interestingly here, I will bear the blame before you forever.
Forever. Yeah.
And certainly that has some tones that reflects the eternal nature of Christ's intercession.
You've got to see how similar that is. Even though nothing is said about this passage later in the New Testament that I'm aware of, still, you can't look at this and not see that there's some kind of connection or similarity with how Jesus becomes, takes our blame and our sins and removes them and takes them on himself.
There was another parallel a little earlier when Joseph cast his brothers into prison for 3 days, and he released them after 3 days. And we have, of course, kind of a foreshadowing there in one sense of how Christ released captives of sin after 3 days, rising from the dead.
Rising from the dead, right, 3 days. Okay, verse 10. For if we had not lingered, Judah says, surely by now we would have returned the second time. Okay, verse 11. And their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man. A little balm, a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. So they had some things there, but you couldn't live off those apparently. You're just sending some of them as a gift for Pharaoh. Take double money in your hand. So the money that was put back in your sacks, and then the additional money, I think is what he means here. And take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight, or maybe it's double the money you originally spent, including what was put back in your sacks, probably. Okay, he says, perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also and arise, go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. I have a picture here of this guy that doesn't look like he's a little kid. A lot of art you see has got little kid that basically is being sent off by Jacob, and he's not little. Let's go do a little math again here. We saw this chart a while ago. This is a chart showing the children of Jacob. On the left margin, who the mother is, how old they were when Joseph was sold into slavery. And Joseph was 17, as you recall. And Benjamin would be like 6 years later. All the math you look and as you read the content would be 11 years old. Okay, so at the time that Joseph was sold into slavery. Hold on just a second here. And then we just read a little bit ago, or in the last 2 chapters ago, that when Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So when Joseph stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, how old would he be? How old would Benjamin be then? Tough math. 24 years old, okay, when he stood before Pharaoh. But now, how many years have gone by of feast or, of plenty?
7.
7 years have gone by. And then we can read later on, which we won't do right now, but over in chapter 45, verse 6, we learn it was 2 years into the famine is when the brothers come down to Egypt. So that would make him
33.
32, isn't it? 2 years of famine. 33? Where's my math going here?
20 plus 7.
Okay. What is that?
31.
Right? No, wait a minute. 24 years old when Joseph was 30 years old. Is it 7 years of famine? That's what I'm adding 6, and it was 7 years. Okay.
31.
So that makes him, and then 2 more years, and that makes him 33 years old. So he's 33, so he's not a little kid. He's a full-grown man, but still dear to his father. Doesn't want to lose him. And that's who they're taking down. So he's not a little kid. That's just a point. I think it's good to know that he's older.
One point too.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Jacob here makes this explicit statement that I think is certainly interesting about, if I am grieved, I am grieved. I'm bereaved. In verse 14.
I'm bereaved, yeah.
We're told in Isaiah 53 that it pleased him to grieve, or God was grieved or bereaved of his son, and willing to suffer grief for the loss of his son.
Did it say that God was bereaved or Jesus was bereaved? Just to be accurate here, I'm trying to think.
Isaiah 53. Let's see.
You got that part?
Okay, verse 10, you're correct. But the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief.
Yeah.
And he rendered himself as a guilt offering, and he will see his offspring, verse 10. He will prolong his days.
And certainly we know that God was bereaved at that, but
Right.
in that
Good
context. Okay, verse 15, moving on here. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon." Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us to take us as slaves with our donkeys." So here it is again. They're just going like, "Wow, this is it. We're done. We're going to be taken as slaves, and it's going to happen to us as we caused to happen to our brother Joseph." With our donkeys. Why would you be so concerned about your donkey? Like saying, I'm going to be put in prison and my car is going to be taken away. Oh, big deal. I mean, I don't know why. They cared about their donkeys a lot, I guess. I guess they were. 19. When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house, and said, "O sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in the full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand. And we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." But he said, that is the steward said, "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Doesn't explain why he did it, but he says, yeah, I was in charge of that, and I had your money, and I'm the one that did that. And that's it. Of course, he did that because Joseph told him to do that, because he's got this plan. And then he brought Simeon out to them. So he takes him out of prison. Moving on to verse 20. 24 rather. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the present ready for Joseph coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. This happens quite a bit, them bowing down to him. Then he asked them about their well-being, and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" And they answered, "Your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. So really that dream is being fulfilled here a lot. This is what God said was going to happen in the dream, and this is what's happening. Verse 29. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Now his heart yearned for his brother, so Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep, and he went into his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself and said, "Serve the bread." Okay. So another emotional time for him. I mean, he just has missed them for these many years. Verse 29. So they set him a place by himself. That is Pharaoh, I believe, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. Now, you can look all you want and try to figure out, well, what was so abominating about Egyptians, eating with the Hebrews? And you really can't find any certain fact there. Some have said, well, yeah, the Egyptians worshiped certain animals, and the Hebrews, well, they ate the animals, and that was something. But no, you will see that the Egyptians had animals, and that they, in fact, he says here to bring in meat to eat, so they at least some animals ate them. Some have projected or suggested that it was the fact that they took many animals and sacrificed them, which they thought was just a terrible thing to do. And so that's why they were an abomination. But again, this is pretty far back in history, so I don't know for sure. Some have said that because they were shepherds, which we'll see later on, because they're shepherds and they have cattle, that's an abomination. And the reason is given for that by some historians is that because many people who held flocks and were shepherds were thieving types of people, and they would come into the towns and they would steal people's property, and so that became an abomination to the Egyptians. All don't know, but they sat at separate tables because they were an abomination. It was an abomination for them to eat together. Don't know why. Verse 33. And they sat before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. Now, I'm wondering why he's looking at as astonishment. It may be that it was Pharaoh who assisted them to sit in order by their age. It sounds like, and so they're thinking, how does he know who's the oldest and who's the young? I mean, some of us have gray hair, maybe, I don't know, and some of us don't, but that, I think, is what's astonishing, is that they were placed exactly in their birth order. Then he took servings to them from before him, but Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. I always wondered, did he eat it all? I can't imagine he would have, but he makes the servings 5 times as large. So they drank and were merry with him. Okay. We're close to being done. Yeah, we're about a minute away. I'm going to leave it there because next chapter 44, we have another dramatic adventure that happens before that Joseph finally reveals himself, and it just makes it even tougher than it is already. So let's leave it with this here, that God works in amazing ways. We don't know how he works. We don't know what he's doing. Joseph didn't, back before this happened here, we know now he knows what's going on because he says in just a few verses, now I know what's happening. But all through these years, he didn't know. But apparently, in every context that we see, he trusted God and did what was right and tried to be the best servant, prisoner, and now the best ruler of this nation. And of course, God in all this was committing to Joseph the salvation physically of all these people in putting him in this place. So great account of how God works in our lives. This time we'll be dismissed and we'll get back together in about 10 minutes for worship. Thank you for your participation this morning.